The movie begins with Amanda, a woman using drugs in an apartment. It's nearly Christmas, and in her high state, she jumps off a balcony and falls onto a car, resulting in her death. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man named Roger Murtaugh enjoys a bath when his family surprises him with a heartfelt birthday celebration. The next morning, while preparing breakfast, Murtaugh's wife informs him that his office called and mentioned someone named Michael Hunsaker trying to reach him. This surprises Murtaugh because he hasn't had contact with Hunsaker for 12 years, dating back to their time serving together in the Vietnam War. Murtaugh heads to work and arrives at the crime scene, where he learns that the deceased prostitute is Amanda Hunsaker. Quickly checking the reports, he confirms that she is the daughter of Claire and Michael Hunsaker. In response, Murtaugh urgently calls his wife to obtain Hunsaker's contact information to pay respect to the deceased. On the other hand, Martin Riggs lives in an RV and deceives drug dealers into selling him drugs. After obtaining the stash, he reveals himself as a narcotics sergeant from the police department, leading to the arrest of the dealers. At night, Riggs is alone in his RV, overwhelmed with grief as he looks at a picture of his late wife, Victoria. He contemplates suicide due to the emotional turmoil he's experienced since her death. Despite concerns from the police psychologist about Riggs's mental state, the captain dismisses her opinion, believing that Riggs is pretending to be mentally unstable to secure an early retirement with a generous pension. Back in Murtaugh's office, another detective arrives to suggest that Amanda's case might be a murder rather than a suicide, as there is evidence of someone else being in the apartment with her, and the drugs she consumed were poisoned, ensuring her death within 15 minutes, regardless of whether she jumped or not. The detective informs Murtaugh that he will have a partner on the case. However, Murtaugh becomes suspicious of a man in the office. Suddenly, this man draws his gun, prompting Murtaugh to react swiftly. Surprisingly, the suspicious man is Riggs, who is quicker and holds his gun to Murtaugh's head. Before any harm can occur, the detective introduces Riggs as Murtaugh's new partner for Amanda's case. As Riggs and Murtaugh make their way to their car, Murtaugh mentions that he has read Riggs' file, which shows him as a former Special Forces soldier with proficiency in handling weapons and martial arts. It seems like Riggs is a living lethal weapon. Riggs dismisses the small talk and admits he was transferred here because people think he's crazy and no one else wants to work with him. Murtaugh clarifies that he's not thrilled about working with Riggs either, but has no choice. They arrive at Michael's location, where he implores Murtaugh to find and eliminate everyone responsible for his daughter's death as a personal debt owed to him. Curious, Riggs asks what exactly Murtaugh owes to Michael, and Murtaugh reveals that Michael saved his life during the Vietnam War. Suddenly, they receive an urgent call about officers needed at a nearby location where a man is on the brink of jumping from a building. Riggs offers to go up and try to talk the person down and gets on the ledge, explaining to the distressed individual that he's not alone in contemplating this action, and that it doesn't make him a murderer, as he's just trying to end his pain. Offering a cigarette, Riggs extends his hand to light the cigarette, and he swiftly handcuffs the person before leaping off the ledge onto an air mattress below. Murtaugh scolds Riggs for his approach and takes him to an empty store, where he confronts Riggs aggressively, questioning if he genuinely wants to end his life. Riggs responds equally aggressively, stating he has a special hollow bullet reserved for himself. He reveals that he hasn't used it because he has to get up and go to work every day. Murtaugh angrily hands Riggs his gun, inviting him to go ahead and pull the trigger. Just as Riggs is about to do so, Murtaugh intervenes, realizing the gravity of Riggs' suicidal thoughts. They then head to the house of Amanda's drug dealer, where they find two women packing drugs. Initially inviting the women to cooperate, the situation escalates when they notice guns. The women attempt to flee, but Riggs cuffs them. During the chaos, the dealer opens fire on the officers, prompting Murtaugh to shoot the dealer in the leg. Murtaugh thinks he is in control, but the dealer shoots at him, which causes Riggs to shoot him in the chest, pushing the dealer to fall into the pool and drown. Riggs joins Murtaugh for dinner at his home, and it's evident that Murtaugh's eldest daughter, Rianne, is enchanted with Riggs. After a hearty meal, Murtaugh and Riggs discuss their case, and both agree that it appears too straightforward to be true. The drug dealer can't be responsible for Amanda's death. However, Murtaugh advises Riggs to take it easy and not jump to conclusions. The next morning, Riggs bursts into Murtaugh's house, urgently insisting they investigate Dixie, a prostitute who witnessed Amanda's death and whom they suspect may have poisoned her. They rush to Dixie's home, only for it to be bombed right before them. Quick to respond, they call for an ambulance and the fire department. While sifting through the debris at the crime scene, Riggs comes across components of a mercury switch explosive, a specialized explosive he recalls being used by Central Intelligence Agency mercenaries during the Vietnam War. Another detective contacts them, informing them that a 6-year-old neighborhood kid saw someone tampering with Dixie's electric meter in the morning while playing hide-and-seek. They approach the child and inquire about the man's description. The child identifies the man by describing a tattoo identical to Riggs. This revelation confirms that the bomber was indeed a former Special Forces member. They attend Amanda's funeral to question Hunsaker, as Murtaugh believes that Hunsaker was planning to reveal important information, and Amanda's murder was intended to silence him. Initially hesitant, as he fears for his other daughter's safety, Hunsaker finally agrees after Murtaugh promises protection. Hunsaker reveals that during the Vietnam War, he worked for Shadow Company, a CIA paramilitary unit tasked with disrupting the local heroin trade. After the war, the former CIA agents, mercenaries, and soldiers reformed Shadow Company into a criminal organization. Under the leadership of retired General Peter McAllister and his right-hand man, Mr. Joshua, they began trafficking large quantities of heroin from Asia to the United States. Hunsaker's role as a banker allowed him to launder the illegal funds. He initially contacted Murtaugh to confess and act as a witness against Shadow Company, but in retaliation, McAllister ordered Amanda's murder. During their conversation with Hunsaker, Joshua suddenly arrives in a helicopter and shoots Hunsaker. Riggs manages to fire shots at the helicopter, but Joshua escapes. He contacts McAllister and informs him that the police may have discovered the entire operation, and McAllister expresses disappointment that Joshua didn't eliminate the police at the scene. Later that night, Riggs and Murtaugh investigate the escorts to uncover their connection with the criminal organization when Joshua arrives in a car and shoots Riggs in the chest. Fortunately, Riggs is wearing a bulletproof vest, which saves his life, but they decide to fake his death to gain an advantage. Murtaugh receives an urgent call informing him that they found a dead body matching the description of the blonde guy Rianne is dating near his house. He rushes home and finds a note indicating that his daughter has been kidnapped. He receives a call from Joshua, who instructs him to meet them at El Mirage Lake. Joshua then pretends to be a reporter and inquires about the shooting from a homicide officer who falsely claims that Riggs was killed. Riggs explains to Murtaugh that they have no choice but to trust his shooting skills, and the only way to ensure Rianne's safety is to confront the criminals. If they spare their enemies, they'll likely harm Rianne. Murtaugh drives alone to the designated location at sunrise, while Riggs positions himself nearby to provide sniper support. At the scene, a group of men offer Murtaugh a simple exchange that if he goes with them, they will release Rianne. Murtaugh, however, refuses to comply and pulls out a grenade, threatening that they will all die unless Rianne is set free. In response, Joshua shoots Murtaugh, prompting Riggs to open fire with incredible precision, taking down most enemies. But just before he can target Joshua, he runs out of ammunition, and McAllister captures him. The three are then taken to the club's basement, used as a front by Shadow Company. There, Riggs is tortured to force him to reveal which cops know about the organization. Murtaugh is also subjected to brutal treatment, but both remain steadfast. As Joshua leaves the basement, instructing another man to kill Riggs, Riggs breaks free and begins taking out numerous Shadow Company members. He helps Murtaugh and Rian escape as well. Joshua pursues them, firing at them, but Riggs retaliates by shooting at Joshua's car. However, Joshua manages to escape. Riggs insists they take Murtaugh to the hospital, but Murtaugh suddenly becomes concerned about Joshua knowing his home address and potentially endangering his wife and kids. They rush to Murtaugh's house, but Joshua arrives first, eliminating the officers on patrol. Riggs has the perfect opportunity to kill Joshua, but refrains, resulting in a fistfight that Riggs wins. They hand Joshua over to the police, who take him into custody. However, Joshua breaks free, seizes an officer's gun, and attempts to shoot Riggs and Murtaugh, forcing them to return fire and kill him. A few days later, after visiting his wife's grave, Riggs shares a Christmas meal with Murtaugh and his family. Riggs presents Murtaugh with the bullet he had been saving to end his life, as he no longer feels the need to do so. Lethal Weapon, released in 1987. Directed by Richard Donner, produced on a budget of approximately $15 million. The screenplay was written by Shane Black. At the time, he was a relatively unknown writer, but his script for Lethal Weapon was highly sought after and sold for a considerable sum, launching his career. Like many of Shane Black's scripts, Lethal Weapon is set during the Christmas season. This juxtaposition of a holiday backdrop with action and crime became a signature of Black's writing style. Lethal Weapon remains a seminal action film, and its influence can be seen in many subsequent buddy cop movies. The blend of humor, heart, and high-octane action makes it a favorite among fans of the genre. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications and leave a like to help the channel out.